So our next speaker is, where's the little clicker button, is Fallon Savoury, who's the Senior Vice President of Revenue at Timely. I've had the good fortune to work with Fallon in a couple of businesses, and so, I'm really excited to get her to come and talk to you today. She's an experienced revenue executive. She's got deep and proven experience at developing and executing new go-to-market strategies, along with building and leading customer teams. So she's built high-performing revenue teams globally, and her experience spans both high volume and enterprise sales. So her wheelhouse is really about sales and marketing management frameworks and working with companies to enable them for success. And so currently, as I said, she's SVP of Revenue at Timely, and she's also on the board of Onside as an independent director. So welcome, Fallon.
Oh, thank you. Hello everyone, thanks for that, Amanda. That was a very nice intro. Hi everyone, as Amanda said, I'm Fallon, and I've worked in the SaaS industry my entire career, so around 15 years. Absolutely love it. Breathe it, love it, all those things. Yes, my experience spans totally across the high volume, but also enterprise sales, and a huge part of my career has really been being deployed into different regions and kind of doing that whole setting up shop, being the boots on the ground. So that's why when I was asked to talk today, I was like, yeah, it's quite exciting to be able to share some of my war stories. I have a few scars. But I have, however, only been at Timely for about 6 months. So today, when I share my experience, it'll be across a whole bunch of different companies as well. But definitely some Timely stuff for sure. So, to start us off, I don't know how to use this, so I'm just going to use the laptop and stick to what I know. So what my experience, I'm also pregnant, so I will get out of breath constantly. So what my experience has taught me so far is kind of captured here. So I think it's really important, and I think Amanda covered this off really, really well, to really understand your revenue model and what makes it unique for your organisation. And then secondly is making sure you've got those foundations right and sorted before scaling offshore. And then the main thing I want to talk through today is kind of the 3 things that you should look at when entering a new market. And anyone that knows me knows that I like to try and simplify absolutely everything. And so for me, it's kind of boiled down to these 3 things, which is really understanding, your TAM and those macro trends. So what's going on in market and what is the size of the prize for you. Then second, it's around the product market fit, but I love to call it your problem market fit. And then thirdly is around the culture and how that's different. So when I think about the revenue model, I think about a revenue model as pretty much just defining everything from your ideal customer profile, how that then influences your unique selling proposition and market, and then that helps you really understand your channels to market, so your revenue streams. From there, it really helps to understand how you're going to capture that growth and help with all those leading indicators. There's nothing worse than already failing to tell you that you're failing. You want to have those sort of stop gaps to say, shit, it's not looking so good, we should pivot. The other key thing, and I think, definitely don't want to repeat anything that Amanda's been saying, but it has to be across your entire revenue function, obviously, so marketing, sales, and CS. Then it's all around making sure you've got the foundational stuff sorted. So this really means about mapping the buyer journey, really making sure you understand how your buyers buy, and then how you align your processes to that. So this is really fundamental, and as Amanda said, it's amazing how many people you talk to that don't actually have real rigour around mapping this out and really understanding it and documenting it, coming back to it, reviewing it, and all of those things. Because then from there, it can help you obviously identify those leading indicators, but how is funnel conversion going, helping you make decisions around where you should position yourself, and then making sure you're aligning things like your commission model to really make sure you're driving the behavior that you want from your sales team. Now, things to look at when entering a new market. So first off, I think this is the most common thing, and we're all kind of across total addressable market and size of the opportunity. And I think when I talk to founders that are going offshore, the most common conversation is totally, we've mapped out our total addressable market, feeling fucking pumped about it, there's a great opportunity, can't wait. And that's great. But it's also around obviously really understanding what are the headwinds in that market and making sure that you're really understanding how you either leverage or combat those. Sorry, puffed again. It's really important that you understand those major shifts in consumer behaviour. So what I mean by that is what have been historical trends and then how that's looking in the foreseeable, and how that's then going to adapt and change your go-to-market, and being really, really obsessed with that. So an example I can actually draw from is currently today what I'm going through with Timely, and that's around us really accelerating growth in the US. And so obviously we've done the research, we know the size of the opportunity, it's a heavily competitive environment, but we still feel like we can get an even better and stronger position in market. And then obviously we talk about macro trends. Most common thing right now is all around recession and how that is going to affect discretionary spend and how that will affect our customer. But it wasn't until we really dug into that conversation and got to the root of it that we looked at, okay, well, how does that actually affect our customer's customer? And how does that also affect not just getting that into to our budgeting, into our forecast, but also how we position ourselves in market? So we've seen a trend across the board around fragmentation, and the recession is only speeding that up. So for us, it's around how do we take something that on the surface could look quite negative to actually being really positive. Actually, the market might be shifting to more into our ICP. So how do we double down on that? And what does that look like? Second thing is around the product or problem market fit. So whether or not your TAM research and your macro trends and everything like that has helped you identify a difference in product market fit, it's really important to obsess over what this looks like. And I think we've all talked about it already today, but this is all around understanding the similarities and differences in the problem that you're solving. So what are the nuances and the perceived value of your product, and how is that different from New Zealand? What learnings can you bring forward? You want to make sure you've got global alignment but regional focus. An example that I have is actually from my time at Vend, and it's a real doozy. We were wanting to go into UK and EMEA. We had already seen amazing organic growth, wanted to double down. UK, quite an expensive place to be hiring people, so thought Berlin's a cool city. And it aligned with our other offices we already had, so Melbourne, San Fran, Toronto. Awesome city, culturally dense, great. It also was a tech hub, so it made a lot of sense from that perspective. But it wasn't until we got boots on the ground that we really understood there were actually quite big nuances in the value creation and how our product was perceived. The biggest roadblock, which feels like it was obvious, but it wasn't, was the tax regulations. So it was actually illegal to use Vend in Berlin. So needless to say, that didn't quite work out. So it's things like that until you actually get boots on the ground, you won't really understand that, right? No one comes forthright and talks about their tax, and usually the people that are interested in your product at the very beginning are innovative and might be wanting to cut corners. So that's a great example. Also, at my time at Aura, we were moving to the Australian market. Our ICP, big box retail and grocery stores. So for here, it's Countdown, Woolies. So moving over to Australia seemed pretty obvious, like Progressive Enterprise, Countdown and Woolies. Fantastic, very much aligned. But because of just the utter sheer of size, it meant our ICP was actually quite different. And so how they perceive value and what they wanted to drive from the product was actually a little bit different. So that was a key thing to understand. Lastly is all about culture. So really understanding the differences and similarities in culture. So when we think about culture, usually we think about brand perception, we think about symbolism and how, I don't know if this is offending anyone, but put it there anyway. The backwards peace sign, totally kosher in the US. Here, it's a not fantastic thing to do. And then there's also, we talk about thought processes being different in different cultures. So we kind of go into a new market understanding that there's going to be these nuances. But for me, it's really understanding that culture means fundamentally how you sell. So what is different about your customer and your customer's customer and how they buy? Do they buy the same way as they do in New Zealand, or is it different? Is it procurement? Like, what is their process looking like? And also, what are their internal processes and how are they different? An example here, once again, is timely, and just when looking at the UK market, is kind of reviewing our go-to-market and how can we unlock a lot more growth. And once we asked ourselves that question, how are they buying different? Like, what is different about our consumer and their customer? And what we actually are finding is that our customers' buying behaviour is a lot different to what we see in this side of the world. So if I want to go get a haircut, I live in London, I'll most of the time go on a marketplace and I'll look for a salon in my area that is available at the right time that suits me. It's not so much about brand loyalty like we do here. Like here, I go to my hairdresser. If she moves to another place, I follow her around the show. So it's a lot different. So how we position ourselves, how we communicate our value, how we set up our sales teams is slightly different. So that's kind of all of the things that I've learnt so far, but I'd love to share with you some more mistakes. There's two real big ones that come to mind. So this one I feel is the most common one that I chat to people about is, okay, we're going offshore, we've got a kick-ass person, they're in Australia, they're going to be the country manager, and they're going to just really help us double down growth. They're going to bring all their expertise, they're going to come up with the go-to-market. But it's really important to understand that you know your product best, you know the problem best. And so it's just making sure when you're building out that go-to-market strategy that you still own that. And they can really focus on that cultural piece, the how we sell, how we take that to market. Those two things together will help you have a full rounded go-to-market rather than just expecting a silver bullet person. They've got experience, harness that, narrow it in on what they're good at. The second mistake, these are definitely not the only two mistakes I've made, but we'll just focus on these, is around when looking at a new market. A lot of the time we compare what is working or not working today. We have to actually really go back to the start line. So age and stage matters. So what I mean by that is what worked in the very beginning. And 9 times out of 10 when I talk to companies, what works in the beginning is boots on the ground, having conversations, letting those conversations inform their product strategy, all of those things. That cannot be underestimated. Whether that's you relocating or whether that's someone you trust getting into market, that's 100% what I've done most of my career, is getting in there, getting that feedback, feeding it back, then from there establishing how we go to market. So overall, that was majority of my advice, and I think it can be well captured in these 3 buckets, which is, global alignment, regional focus, and really focusing on the macro trends, what's happening in market, how do you leverage those to either your advantage or combat those. Then secondly is all around the positioning. It's all around that perceived value. And then third is culturally how you sell in that market and really making sure you understand the nuances there as well. Cool, that was me.